Recording.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erika, Briones, and I help the shy underdogs become kings and queens in the bedroom. And today I'm very excited. So today on our show, I bring on my guest, Stef Sifandos, and he has a diverse background in the global health and wellness industry. He is a sought-out innovator in personal transformation due to his extensive background. He is a well-respected mentor and trainer to some of Australia's top professional sports teams. His knowledge incorporates everything from behavior science, philosophy, NLP, and currently studying for his master's degree in applied neurosciences in one of the most prestigious universities in the world, the King's College of London. And I discovered Stef through our mutual friend, Alexa, and I really, really loved how he held space for her during her heartbreak episode. And what I really experience of Stef on the online space is how he breaks down the psychology of relationships. And I know that he's known for being a relational alchemist and how he breaks down the psychology and what's happening to us internally. And so I really have the great privilege to introduce to you Stef Sifandos. Hello,
Thank
Stef.
you. Hello, how are you?
Great. And so thank you so much for being on the show today. So one of the first questions I ask my interviewees is, what turns you on about life?
Oh, that's a good question. I like that. What turns you on about life? So many different things. Are you limiting me to one, or are you going to give me many that I can speak to?
The first top three.
The first top three. Okay, the first top three. Spending time with people that I love and care about, people that resonate with me deeply. So being in a very strong, supported social circle, and having fun in those social circles, that turns me on. Growth, learning, wisdom, teaching. I was bundle that all up in one. So growing, learning, understanding the world from different perspectives, growing through that, transforming, and then imparting that wisdom or that knowledge and really serving others. And probably that's the third one, and then this is no particular order, of course, is that serving of others, really serving others and assisting them in becoming the grandest version of themselves possible, really breaking down their perceived limitations of themselves and how they move through the world, and allowing others or helping others to really move with greater freedom and liberation through the world. That's very exciting for me.
I love what you said, being the best version of ourselves. And I feel like I've heard that a lot on my own personal development, from hearing podcasts, listening to Tony Robbins lectures and Audible, and reading tons of books. And I feel like it always changes, as you get older. And I believe like that sentence comes to you at a different time, and you probably experience it differently at different times. And I really love that message, but it's really like, how can you really embody it, especially men, because the recent themes is like suicide here in the US, with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. And so it's been a topic on my mind, and I really feel that men need to have a conversation around like, vulnerability or sharing what's actually happening. And I would really, really appreciate your insight, because I do coach a few men in my programs. So I would love to hear, like, how can men really, really speak to other men powerfully without getting in their head, right?
It comes down to a number of different factors, but one of them is that, what I mentioned earlier just a moment ago around what excites me is being with people that I have a very deep connection with, and spending time with people in that space and having fun and play and just being connected. And every day I connect with a group of men where we train, we exercise, we move the body, and it's fun, it's tough, it's focused, it's fun, but there's support there. And I'm very fortunate in my life, I'm very blessed that I've created space and intention to ensure that I have strong support circles, not only from all people, but specifically with men. So when we're speaking to men, one of the important keys for men to maintain a strong mental, or to maintain mental health and mental aptitude, and begin to express themselves organically and tap into emotional health, emotional fitness, emotional intelligence. It's surrounding themselves with healthy masculinity, healthy masculine men as well. And knowing that if they are stuck, if there is a pain point that they are experiencing, or various pain points that they're experiencing, or they're having trouble in an area of life, they can share that load and share that burden. A problem shared is a problem halved. And it's not about problems, it's about puzzles as well. So helping men not see the world through a lens of problems and having to solve that problem or fix that problem or fix themselves. But it's, again, make it more intriguing, make it more of it's not a problem to solve, it's a puzzle to solve. And taking that perspective is useful because it decreases the amount of pressure that we place on ourselves. Therefore, we don't feel so much neural tension. So our physicality relaxes, our mental faculties, they're not so overwhelmed with having to fix this problem, because if we don't fix it, we're not good enough, or we're not enough, or we're not valued enough, we're not worthy enough. So surrounding ourselves with men that can support us in our journey is very important. It's something that we've lost in modernity, that tribal connection, that sense of tribe and community. And then once we establish that foundation with men, we're able to then reach out to the broader community as well, and be able to rely on women, be able to rely on children, be able to rely on every human being when we are really, really stuck. And that doesn't remove our sovereignty. It doesn't remove our ability to be self-reliant. These are important qualities and characteristics for every human being, especially men in particular. But what it does do is it allows us to not overwhelm ourselves and keep going deeper and deeper into the darkness of ourselves, and we become lost as men. And that's, these are the results. And this is not just for men, applies to everyone. But the result is suicide, because there's no conceivable way out of the pain that we're experiencing. There's no conceivable way out of the dilemma that we are facing. It's ongoing, and we live with it, and it just compounds and compounds. And the only way to end the pain, which is just so painful, is to end our consciousness or our awareness of it. So people either just keep drugging themselves up, ignoring, suppressing, moving away from, or they literally commit suicide very actively and with intention.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's not just men, it's also successful business alpha women that are wanting to be in their masculine. And I understand that some women want to be in that masculine because they want to feel a certain way. And at the end of the day is, having that awareness and having that playtime, whether it's like, working out. And I'm a big fan of meditation. And, earlier today I was just like working out, doing some qigong exercises just to get in my body, to fully be like, okay, I'm in my body and I feel present. And it takes a lot to get to the level where you're on Facebook or doing live streams and you're communicating. And it takes a certain responsibility to not let those inner demons get in the way.
Yeah, you mentioned an interesting point there as well, about movement, and you're doing qigong. It's imperative. Too many men I see what defines unhealthy is when we move in extremes consistently over long periods of time, and there's no balance there in terms of the contrast that we're expressing. Most men are very yang. There's very yang energy, very yang expression. So balancing that so we can move very hard, we can move at intensity, but balancing that with meditation, with qigong, with yoga, with more subtle practices that are more yin practices as well. It helps bring ourselves back into balance and equilibrium, so we don't feel so overwhelmed and confused and compounded by life as well. And that's another key. I mean, there's so many. I'll keep going on and on about this, but that's another key that men can use to unlock their own potential and really come from a greater place of inner peace.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the questions I wanted to talk about, which relates to the theme of communication, is I notice in my personal experience and the experience of a lot of women here in the US is, the whole texting game of ghosting and saying I'm unavailable. Why do you think that a lot of men do that? Why do you think a lot of men end up ghosting or end up being emotionally unavailable? And there's like so many theories that we can play with here.
Yeah, essentially it comes down to, you can strip all of this down to one or two variables. Obviously, it's a product of social conditioning to some extent. So how that individual views women, how that individual views relationships, so their beliefs and their models of reality around how to behave in relationship, or how to be in relationship, and what that actually means for them. It's their level of self-respect and self-worth as well. Are they coming from a place of fear, or are they coming from a place of transparency and openness and self-confidence, but authentic self-confidence, not arrogant, ego-based self-confidence, but authentic self-confidence, congruent. Does that person know who they are? So we play games when we don't know who we are. We play games. We pretend, we place masks on and facades when we don't really know who we are, and we're trying to give the other person what we think they need, or we're coming from a hyper selfish place because we haven't evolved or grown through our own emotional discontinuity, or we haven't grown through our own how can I put this? Our own psychological immaturities is probably the best way to put it. So what we do is we place a defense up, the ego steps in, and we come and we act from a place of fear. So why do men respond that way is because they're coming essentially from a very hyper selfish way. So they're coming from a wounded place. So when we keep stripping that back, it's essentially because they haven't dealt with their own inner demons. They haven't dealt with their own pain. They haven't dealt with their own darkness. They haven't dealt with their own difficulty. And so therefore we project outward, because it's easy to project outwards. And these are all the subtleties in our behavior. It's easy to project outwards and blame others, or play these games that are distracting us from actually looking within ourselves, as it is to actually look at ourselves and say, okay, who do I really want to be? Can I take responsibility for my behavior and who I am? Do I even want to search my beliefs, my unconscious belief patterns and who I am? Can I even understand that? Most people don't want to go down that path because it's very challenging and it's very painful.
Mm-hmm. And just really curious, what belief systems did it take for you to get to that frame of mind? Because I'm just thinking you were always born this divine masculine. No, okay. What was the transition? Or
Thank you for the compliment now, but I deeply appreciate it. I'm humbled. I've still got a lot of work to do, but I definitely was not, well, maybe in some sense, we were all born that way. It's about reconnecting to that. It's about coming home, maybe. It's about coming home. And home is that place of equilibrium and balance and inclusivity and connection and openness.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was the transition for you? What was that light bulb? You started to be aware of the game, right? And I believe Neil Strauss, he wrote the book, The Game, that pretty much taught men, especially in the pickup community, how to pick up women and how to, play into that game, whether it's negging. And I know because I dated a pickup artist. So I'm just really curious of your personal experience, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Definitely. Firstly, pickup artistry, PUA, is the majority of it's inauthentic. The majority of it's a farce. The majority of it's a load of shit, and it comes from a place of fear, and it comes from a place of manipulation and unhealthy practices, generally speaking. When you get yourself in alignment with who you are, and it requires a tremendous amount of work, and you just be yourself naturally in the world, you will attract, when you come from a healthy place, you will naturally attract whatever it is that you really desire, whether it be in relationship or whether it be some other element of life. For me, my wake-up call was a few years ago when my relationship, my intimate romantic relationship with my partner at the time, it became unraveled with her. And I was dishonest in that relationship, and I wasn't in integrity. I was dishonest with myself. I was dishonest with her. I was really quite confused and coming from a place of immaturity. And when we began to really go deep into that, I made a choice to really unpack who I've been all my life and where all these subtle and gross behaviors come from, how I treat myself, how I treat others, my belief systems, how I view myself, how I view others. how I choose to be in this world, how I choose to express, how I choose to receive and give love. And it's an ongoing journey. But I've been deep diving into that for a few years now, and it was a tremendous wake-up call, because I observed face to face how much pain I caused this person because of my dishonesty. And, you know, I cared for her deeply. And at the same time, I had a very distorted view, an unhealthy view of what relationships, intimate romantic relationships were. So I had to go, I didn't have to, but I chose to go very deep into that, and broad and in breadth and just explore. I made a commitment essentially to explore every facet of my being and define what it means for me to be a man in this world, and what it means for me to be in my healthy masculine, what it means to be an honorable human being. And I had to unpack all that, and I had to delayer a lot of who I was and what I was being, how I was behaving. It was very confronting, and there's a lot more details to that. But essentially, she assisted in facilitating that for me as well. But I made that conscious choice to be a different person, and to be a person of integrity. And I didn't know where I was going. It was unknown for me. It was immersing into the mystery, into the darkness, and it was quite confronting and very, very painful and fearful. But I made that commitment. No matter what, I'm going into that space, and that's all there is to it. And it's an ongoing journey, of course, but I have come a tremendous way compared to where I was internally, and then externally, how I move into the world as well.
And I really like that you said it was an introspective moment. So what came to mind is Kenzo versus Centauri. So there's this distinction of sometimes people change through those, like they're so inspired, maybe they'll go to one of those motivational speaking events, Tony Robbins. They're like, yes, I'm ready to change. Or it can be that painful, I'm so sick and tired of this moment. And for you, it was like, you know, I'm aware of that thought. You're coming from a place of, okay, I'm willing to change. And so I really believe that that self-awareness, I'm not sure if that came through meditation or prayer, but however you got to that place. And I definitely feel like you've done the work, because now we're having these conversations to really help other people on their journey as well.
Yeah, it's a powerful play. Like, to respond to that, that statement query about how I spent hours, I let go of my businesses. I let go of so much in my life. I spent hours every day, 6 to 12 plus hours in what I would call introspective personal growth. That was a combination of meditation, prayer, reading, spending time with practitioners, varied practitioners, healers, psychotherapists, really understanding myself, spending time in nature, moving my body. Everything I was doing with deep intent and aiming to encompass clarity, and was being very open. And I was practicing self-compassion. The first time in my life I was really practicing what does it mean to be kind to me, and opening my heart in that place. And there were varied practices that I was engaging in, and I did this for quite an amount of time, until I didn't place an end date on it. It wasn't about the outcome. It was about immersion into the experience at no matter what. And you know, for lack of a better term, I sacrificed a lot of everything else, but it was a worthy sacrifice. It was something that I was very happy to do, and I'll do it again. In order to go very, very deep into these aspects of self. And it was multiple Satori experiences that I felt that I had during that period of time, and continue to as well. Like literally 2 days ago, I had another a massive aha moment listening to something, and then I made some connections in my own mind, and it relieved me of this subtle misunderstanding of self. It was really beautiful as well. So these revelations are consistently happening if we're open to them.
Absolutely. And it's great to have that ability where you have time to like dive deep. But a lot of us, because I'm going to go back to the topic of social media, a lot of people are so much about consuming, and you know, even myself, like just like watching YouTubes, or how to do this, or how to, you know, do this mind hack, right? And so I was really curious to hear, like, what is your take on how social media affects, you know, our relationships psychologically? Because I believe that you break down something around like the vagus nerve, or, you know, you seem to like really nerd out on the mind. And I'm just like really curious, like what does social media do to us, like in our brains?
Yeah, it depends how we use social media. So obviously where we place our attention, so from a physiological perspective, wherever we place our attention, depending on what we are placing our attention on, certain areas of the brain will grow or develop neuronal connections better than others. So it's like I suppose a cost benefit analysis. Like where we want to place our attention is very, very important, because we want to place our attention on things that matter to us and what we value. Again, depends how we use social media. If we're using social media as a distraction, we over time will become, if it's mindless or useless information that we're absorbing, we'll become what we're absorbing, what we're paying attention to. If we're using it as a distraction, then we will be distracted. We'll also become very efficient at when we're scrolling and looking, or whether we are on the computer or on a smartphone, a handheld device, we'll become very efficient at deciphering information very, very quickly as well. So that's a cool thing too. It just depends why we're using social media. If we're using social media to distract ourselves from our relationships or what we don't want to confront, then we'll generally become very good at that. So we'll develop neuronal patterns and behavioral patterns around that as well. So we'll play that role in every area of life. When something is too confronting or too overwhelming, or we feel that neurologically or through the ego, through the mind, through the emotional body, we'll quickly distract. So that becomes a pattern then as well. And if we don't confront, and it's not about being negatively confronting, but if we don't face the issues that or the difficulties and the challenges the internal challenges that we're feeling, they'll continue to be there. They'll just show up in a different way, namely unconsciously. So again, it's a very broad question, a great question, but it's while we're using social media, you know, are we coming at it from a place of the grass is greener mentality? So while I'm on social media, my social media is searching for something better than where I'm living at right now in the present moment. Because if we're doing that, we're missing the wonder and the beauty in the present moment, whether that be with a partner in relationship, whether that be what we're looking at in the world, nature, whether that be our friends, whether that be the opportunities that could come to us in the present moment that we miss out on because we're distracted. We have this habit of distraction because we're bored. Like we have to be mindful of that.
Right. Absolutely. And I was just thinking about, you know, even before social media, there was a newspaper. I feel like there's always, you know, or billboards, people were always distracted, except now we have like that sound, like the ding, and we're just like, oh, I have to get maybe someone's messaging me or someone's texting me, or maybe I'm getting a new follower for some influencers. And I really believe it's just a matter of like, you know, turning off your phone first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning that I do is like I meditate for 20 minutes no matter what. Well, unless there's like a fire or something, but I always meditate. Yeah. So one of the next topics that I want to get is like the juiciness. So one of the big conversation pieces on my Facebook wall was about, why do people have casual sex? And there was about 123 comments regarding people's belief systems around casual sex. There was, you know, half of the people saying, oh, casual sex is just wrong, it's bad, I'm just going to save myself for a deeper relationship. And I can see both sides. I can see how, you know, at certain points, like, okay, I could see that some people want something meaningful, and other people are like, hey, it's fun, maybe it's just their personality, like maybe that's what they value. So I'm just curious about your take on why people have casual sex.
Well, firstly, casual sex is neither wrong or right. It's a personal disposition. It's something that's very natural or organic to us as human beings. Like we don't just have sex to procreate. We have sex to bond, to connect, for pleasure. So it's a very natural act. It's a very natural experience to engage in. Society and certain cultural constructs have deemed it to be inappropriate for the most part, yet there are billions of dollars of industry supporting casual sex as well. It's an oxymoron. Our society is, we live in hypocrisy and paradoxes. It's because we can't face the reality of who we are and what we are. And part of what we are is our biology, and part of what we are is our psychology, and part of what we are is our society and our conditioning and so forth. Did you ask why people have casual sex?
Yeah.
Because it's fucking natural. because we want to, because it feels good. Because from a place of physicality, it feels amazing, especially when if you're really connected to yourself and you have a deeper understanding of who you are. Well, first of all, let's define casual sex. Define casual sex for me in this context. What do you mean by casual sex?
Non-committed, consensual relationship between two people that want to participate in a pleasurable experience.
Awesome definition. Just define non-commitment for me.
Non-commitment. It's a really good question. Just not having a relationship that's based on monogamy principles. I know it sounds like a question. I've literally have never been asked that question before, so I'm figuring it out with you.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. So maybe in this context is non-committed, non-monogamous, and no intention of that relationship being sustainable or long term. Is that would be part of it as well?
Yes.
To define casual sex, and then also, are we removing an emotional context from that as well, or a deepened emotional context, or can that still be part of casual sex in this definition? In this context?
I believe it's fluid. I believe it could always change, right?
Yep.
I mean, I grew up from a Catholic background, and so my expectations is something that I was talking about, that I was coming from a place where, okay, I'm going to have sex for marriage. I'm going to save myself for marriage. Eventually that didn't happen. And now I'm okay with the idea that if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, great. I don't have pressure on myself for it to happen. And I believe because I had so much pressure on living to that expectation based on society, that I feel so much more free and liberated. I do say that there is a part of me, there's a part of my values that I do deeply desire a long-term partnership. Whether it turns into marriage or something serious, I have no expectations.
Yeah. So if we go to why people have casual sex, it's because it's just very natural. It's something that's built in us from an evolutionary perspective, and it helps us. But we're pro-social beings. Like, it helps us bond. It helps us connect. It helps us understand ourselves. It helps us understand others. So these are more innate or implicit, unconscious drivers of why we have casual sex. I don't think most people are very aware of it. I mean, some are, of course. I don't mean to blanket statement people in any capacity. It just depends who you are and what your intentions are with respect to casual sex. But the why behind it is because it's something that is necessary in our lives. Like, we don't have to be pair bonded, or we don't have to be deeply in love with every person that we have sex with. We have physiological urges as well that can be met through that bonding. Now, if you are emotionally intelligent, you carry with yourself emotional fitness, and you can communicate consciously, and the other person can as well. The experience is heightened. Now, again, doesn't mean it has to last forever, or it has to be monogamous or non-monogamous but last for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. No, not necessarily. There are so many factors that play a part in determining who we choose to spend our time with on an ongoing basis. Part of that is our own unconscious fears or unconscious belief systems. Part of that are circumstantial, so they're environmental. Part of that is what the other person yearns for or desires, or where they're at in their life, or where you're at in your life, and they're having clarity on what you want. And maybe it serves a purpose for a brief period of time, and maybe it doesn't. But ultimately, the response to the question is that sex is very natural, and it's through oppressive structures and dogmatic constructs, such as extreme fundamental expressions of religion, that have oppressed and suppressed something that is very natural within us. So we're caught in this paradox, we're caught in this hypocrisy. Like, we really want to engage in something, but parts of us are telling us, or parts of the world are saying, no, don't do that because you're bad if you do. And then, of course, the psyche and our neurology does not want to be part of the out group. We want to be in the in group. So we want to do and be what we are told to be, or what the status quo says, because that way we feel safer. So we're having this constant battle with ourselves, because we're living in such a fallacy. We're living in such hypocrisy, where if we just relaxed a little bit, just as a society, as a collective, just relaxed a little bit, just allowed ourselves to. And I'm not speaking about, everywhere it's a free for all cultural relativity. Everyone can do what they want, when they want, how they want. But if we just got a little bit more real with who we actually are, I really feel the world would be a better place. Like, it would be a more connected place, cohesive place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I definitely feel, as I'm listening to it, I definitely feel like there is part of my shadow that I'll find a guy attractive and I'll have that. But, recently I have been thinking, I do want something deep. I do want something where it can perhaps, be long-term, but at the same time, if I know that our sexual chemistry just doesn't work, I'm probably not gonna, want to pursue it. And I definitely feel that it is a puzzle. And lust and love go hand in hand. If you can't feel that attractive, that primal energy, how can you really get in your heart? And I believe guys, when they make love, they go from their root chakra to their heart chakra, and women go from their upper chakras down into their sacral chakra. And so we all benefit. Like you said before, it's like a collective thing that we all need to relax into.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next question is, this is what I hear from a lot of my clients. A lot of my male clients, they want to please a woman because they want to make her happy. And so I feel like it creates a disconnect. Oh, I just want her to have like a really good experience. I want her to relax. But how can men confidently make love when it doesn't come from, well, I need to just be of service, instead of like, I'm already in my power. I already know if I just come from my source energy, that she's also going to feel that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Essentially, it's about striking a balance within ourselves of being able to give and being able to receive in equanimity, or in equity. So when we're able to do that, we find that the interchange, and we're able to also express that, consciously communicate that with the other, we find that the interchange is deepened. It's very different. Now, what underlies that is essentially how we've learned in our lives to give and receive love, or give and receive affection. So this can become quite a layered or complex exploration of self, but one that is very fruitful if the path is walked in this space. And what I mean by that is that if a man is consistently giving, there's a pattern there. And if he's giving at the expense of his receiving, that's unhealthy. And usually the opposite is true for people in general, men in particular. It's more of a hyper selfish. It's more take. What can I receive? What can I receive? What can I receive? And again, when we look at the patterns of that, it's why is that occurring? Why is it that a man is consistently giving? Because somewhere in his development, through his developmental years, he has learned through interaction with the world and his environment, his primary caregivers, that the safest way to be in the world is to give, because that will keep us safe psychologically, physiologically, etc. That's not the case, though. That's not sustainable. So we bring these behaviors, we bring these attitudes, we bring these belief systems, these underlying substructures of how we view the world into our adult relationships. And we're usually behaving in extremes. And that's not healthy. That's not sustainable. That's why it's not healthy. So finding that balance, that equilibrated balance of giving and receiving, and communicating that. And the only way to communicate that is to know yourself. So it's doing that deep explorative work on self, the shadow self, understanding who we are, what our needs are, how we enjoy to give, how the other enjoys to give, asking questions about the other. So coming from a place of what I call selfish selflessness, where you're able to be very clear on who you are and what your needs are, but you want to simultaneously give to the other person as well. And there's receiving in that too. So it doesn't have to be, hey, I'm going to give you a massage, you give me a massage now, or I'm going to do this for you, then you do this for me. It doesn't have to be like that. That's a stage through the evolution of relationships that is very valid, and just as the stage of hyper selfishness is. But eventually we even transcend that as well, and it becomes an unspoken truth, because it's all about knowing self. It's all about going deep into self and then expressing that into the world, to explain to the world exactly what it is that you want and you need. And then you're able to give from a place of transparency and openness and authenticity, congruency, essentially.
And what are some things that people or men can take away to start practicing, learning how to like give without coming from that, give and take mentality, or the 69 model?
It's the first thing the first step I would take is observing how one feels when they're giving and then they perceive to not be receiving. What are the emotions that are coming up? What are the frustrations that are coming? Obviously, but there's potentially frustration there. What's underlying that frustration? So it's exploring those feelings and getting to the core of the why, but also asking questions around how would I feel if I was given to? Well, it would make me feel needed. It would make me feel good. It would make me feel happy. It would make me feel connected. So connecting to those emotions. So when they're then giving, they can give without expectation. It becomes less rigid. It becomes less goal orientated and more process orientated. So you're just immersing in the journey, as opposed to, oh, I have to make her come and then she can make me come. And again, these are collective habits. Like these are, and again, depends on who you speak to. Some men don't hold that. Some men, it's all about them reaching climax or orgasming, or it's about something else completely different. But to find that balance, we have to really explore the other person. Also, we have to show an interest in the other as we show an interest in ourselves as well. And maybe that's communicating to them openly and overtly, or maybe it's just observing. As men, we can be silent observers as well, and pick up on the nuances and the subtleties of the language and the non-verbal non-verbal communication and body language that our partners are expressing as well. And it's a game. But you have to be attentive. Like, to play the game well, you have to pay a lot of attention. You have to, as men, we have to be discerning. We have to be very clear. We have to begin to open our hearts as well. And that's very difficult for so many men, is to open our hearts and begin to express what we really value from an emotional perspective. Because it can be confronting, because we've been told through society, through media, through varied socio-cultural constructs, that if we're expressing ourselves, it's a weakness. If we're expressing ourselves emotionally, we're vulnerable. If we're vulnerable, we're left open and we're weak. And if we do it from a place of health, it's not weak at all. It's actually empowering, and it's extremely powerful, extremely powerful.
Yeah, there's something you said. You said that some men go for, they aim for a goal. Like, I want her to come. I want her to like have a massive orgasm. And I believe I heard in one of your Facebook lives talking about like sport fucking or something like that. And I personally understand the experience being on the other side of, like, they're just like kind of pushing, like, is she going to do this? And then if you don't, you feel like you failed, and no one really wins, even in the climax. And no one really wins, but both, I believe, as long as you communicate, like, what is your needs? Like, how do you want to be touched? Like, there's like having no pressure, like taking it slow.
Sometimes, in again, it's probably a little bit more difficult or challenging, but not depending on who you are and how connected you are to yourself. I was going to say it may be a little bit more difficult or challenging in casual sex, because you don't know each other as well as you could if you're in a longer term relationship or relationships. But that doesn't matter. Again, if you're confident in yourself, you can communicate that. Maybe that person doesn't want to be penetrated in this way. Like, maybe that person doesn't want to be kissed in this way. So it's asking questions, it's feeling as well. So it's a combination of being intuitive, asking questions, being open to that, and setting those parameters from the beginning as well. So before you begin to engage in that sexual exploration of each other. And that could be a really beautiful bonding practice as well for so many. And getting away from, and so many of us fall into this habit because it's a byproduct of our society. It's systemic within our society to achieve. Again, it's a hyper masculine trait. So it's achieved. So in the bedroom, or use that as an analogy, but when having sex, because it can be in a park, it can be on a couch, it can be in the kitchen table, whatever. But when having sex, it's like, oh, we have to have an outcome. What's the outcome? Oh, of course, it would be an orgasmic experience because that's a peak state. Well, let's get into that. And we need to begin to disconnect from that as much as we possibly can and begin to just be in that now moment and sharing that with that individual and allowing, but being active in that allowing for what is to unfold to simply unfold.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just stillness.
Stillness is massive. It's a massive practice of my own personal practice to be still. I really feel disconnected when I'm not still and when I'm not silent and when I don't engage in that daily practice of stillness and silence. Mm-hmm. For me personally, it's very important for me. And I feel it's like, you know, I've said this a few times, it's like the creator of the universe, God, universal consciousness, whatever you wish to call it, you know, asked itself, you know, where can I place all the secrets of the universe? Where can I place the secrets of the cosmos that need to be earned to really be understood and felt? Maybe I'm anthropomorphizing it to some degree, but anyway. And then God said, I know, I'll place them in silence and stillness because that's where people fear to go the most. Mm-hmm. There's so much wonder and beauty and truth and deep revelations that come from being in stillness and silence around self and others. Yeah, how to be in this world. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a powerful tool in our society because a lot of people see stillness as boredom, which leads people to, I'm like really bored with my wife, or I'm like just like giving up because like I don't feel like it's more. Like people are like, I need more tricks, more lube, more this.
Yeah.
And so if people can just like learn how to be still, which is, you know, comes from Tantra, like weaving masculine and feminine energies, but just in the stillness, like you're gaining so much understanding. And sometimes people get vulnerable. Some people, you know, even if they do stillness and they realize they're not meant to be together, that's powerful.
Very powerful, because then you can begin to live authentically instead of living a lie.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think, in a deeper sense, people get bored? And I believe that you said this before, it's a byproduct of our society.
Because they're getting, at a deeper level, they're getting pushed. Well, there's probably two reasons. One, because there's a legitimate mismatch energetically, emotionally, psychologically, relationally in that relationship. But for most of the time, it's because we're getting pushed to our edge and we don't want to confront by our partners, because our partners are very powerful mirrors of who we are internally, our shadow aspects of self. And we're getting pushed to our edge and we don't want to face that. So we externalize and we blame and we project and we say, well, it's our partner being this and doing that and this relationship's fucked and it's not working, I'm out. And
they end up self-sabotaging and cheating.
Yeah, that's a depending on your personality trait, that's a potential byproduct. And that's what happened to me multiple times. Absolutely. And as men in particular, it's a easy go-to as well. It's an easy distraction, as are drugs and alcohol and so forth, or workaholism, whatever it may be, any distraction. But when we're pushed, to answer the question, when we're pushed to our edge and we don't want to face that darkness, because it's perceived to be ugly, but it's all beautiful. But it's perceived to be ugly. It's deemed by society. And again, we don't want to be in the out group. We don't want to let people know that we have this ugliness within us. And our partners, our intimate partners, will bring that out of us unconsciously and or consciously. And then we can't handle that and we fear it even more. And we go into a deeper cycle of perpetual fear and we externalize and we blame and we project and we push away and we break up before we can actually get to the gold and get to the equilibration and the freedom and the liberation from this unconscious fears and pain that we've been harboring for so long.
And what do you believe is the gold in relationships?
The gold in intimate romantic relationships? The gold is being able to harmonize with each other. In other words, be there for each other to heal. For me, the primary purpose, and this isn't an end goal, this is an evolving end state, basically. So it's never ending. It's consistently moving through. is to be of service to each other and to be of service to all sentience. So intimate relationship for me is about healing, is about equilibrating, it's about growing, it's about breaking through. So utilizing each other as powerful mirrors to honor each other and to help each other grow. And then you as a unit, because ideally you're two whole beings. You're not fragmented and fractured coming together trying to create wholeness. You're two whole beings that, sure, you have fracture and so forth within you, but you recognize your own sovereignty. And you come together because you don't need each other, but because you choose to be with each other, because you know that you're enhancing each other. That's every relationship. You're evolving each other the more time you spend with each other. That includes the challenges, the fears that come up, the difficulties, the emotional extremes that you experience. But you're there to serve each other, and you're there to serve humanity, or serve all of sentience and consciousness, because of the dynamic that you share. And that's, for me, that's what relationships are about.
Mm-hmm. And I really value service as a top value. And I believe actually one of my love languages is service, now that I think about it. So that's pretty cool. And what's your top, actually, what is your love language?
All of my love languages are pretty close. So my top three, based on Gary Chapman's work, my top three are acts of service, quality time, physical touch. Mm-hmm. They're very, very close. I literally I think, I did it a while ago now. I think two are the same, and then one is like 1 point behind or something like that. We're a combination of all of them anyway. But
yeah. It's a spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. But acts of service is a big one for me.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions left. So what advice would you give to men that really just wanted to kind of learn how to start communicating powerfully with their partner?
Yeah. Begin to communicate powerfully with themselves. So take ownership instead of who they are, and begin to observe the patterns in their lives. In relationship, it's a great place to start an intimate relationship. How they feel about themselves, how they feel about their relationship, the important relationships in their lives, and begin to deconstruct themselves.
Yeah. And what top 3 questions did you ask yourself on your journey before you had that awakening? When I say that is, I heard this quote about master your questions and you master your life. Like the kind of questions you ask, master your life.
Yeah, the quality of the questions we ask ourselves lead to the quality of the lives that we live. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that. And that cognitive access point is one way to also deeper access our emotional well as well. The top 3 questions that I ask myself, or 3 questions that I ask myself, why am I behaving this way? So what was my why for this behavior, for all of this behavior? How do I really feel about myself? Like, what is my connection to self? And who do I wish to really be in this world?
I really love that. And one last question is, if you can time travel back to when you were a young lad, let's just say 15, 17, what advice would you tell yourself about women and sexuality?
Just be yourself. Just be you.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Stefanos. I would love to hear, how can people find you or hear about what's the newest project that's coming up? We'd love to hear about it and support you.
Oh, thank you so much. So you can reach me on my website, stefsifandos.com, STEFSIFANDOS.com. And the social media handles are all the same as well. So Stef Sifandos on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc. Follow me on my YouTube channel as well. And a few exciting projects. One is a globally transformative project that I'm involved in deeply. It's called highvibe.network. And I'm super excited to bring high vibrations to the greater collective in so many, many different ways, raising the consciousness of humanity. So you can check that website out as well, highvibe.network. That's a major project that I'm working on at the moment. And of course, just continuing my the work that I do with men, reclaimyourkingdom.com is the next intake. The intake has commenced, and the next Reclaim Your Kingdom 3-month online immersive journey commences the 8th of the 8th, so the 8th of August. And we deep dive every week with men. It's a men's group, how to cultivate healthy masculinity and a healthy consciousness in men as well. And towards the end of the year, I'll be running some very specialized retreats with respect to conscious relating as well, and how we can relate better to ourselves and in our relationships.
Thank you. I'm really excited to hear all about it.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stef. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Erika. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.